Clock off at 12:30, and the whole factory moved as one. Hundreds of workers streaming toward the canteen, tin trays rattling, the smell of gravy thick in the air. For a shilling or less, Britain's factory workers were fed at long formica tables between shifts, and the meals that landed on those enamel plates fueled a nation rebuilding itself. We are counting down 25 meals British factory workers actually ate in the 1950s canteens. Let's begin with number 25. Number 25, brown Windsor soup. Long the butt of British jokes, brown Windsor soup ladled out of vast canteen urns as the opening act of the works dinner. A thin, mahogany-colored broth built from beef bones, root vegetables, and a generous shake of pepper. It arrived in shallow bowls with a hunk of bread on the side. In the crowded canteens of the early 1950s, soup was the cheapest way to take the edge off a shift worker's hunger before the main event. Men fresh off the line spooned it down in minutes, steam rising into cold morning air that still carried machine oil and coal smoke. Dinner ladies stirred the pot between servings, topping it up with hot water when the queue ran long. Few remember it fondly, yet for a generation it was the taste of the canteen. Humble, warming, and gone before the whistle blew again. Number 24. Spam fritters. Few canteen meals divided opinion like the spam fritter, a slab of tinned luncheon meat dipped in batter and dropped hissing into hot fat. Spam had flooded into Britain during the war, and by the 1950s it remained a canteen staple, cheap, filling, and endlessly reliable. Behind the servery, cooks battered slice after slice, stacking the golden fritters under heat lamps beside mounds of chips and marrow-fat peas. The batter crisped into a shattering shell, while the pink meat inside turned salty and soft. A plateful cost mere pennies at the subsidized counter, well within reach of a man on factory wages. The children of those workers, hearing the stories, could scarcely believe it. But for the men who ate it between shifts, the spam fritter was fuel, plain and simple, a taste that spoke of make-do years that never quite let go. Number 23, cheese and potato pie. On meat-light days, or for the growing number of workers who could not stomach offal, the canteen fell back on cheese and potato pie. Layers of sliced boiled potato and grated cheese, bound with a little milk, and baked until the top blistered gold and brown. It was a dish born of wartime thrift, when the Ministry of Food pushed potatoes and cheese as patriotic fare, and it never left the canteen menu. The smell of baked cheese drifted across the dining hall, warm and comforting against the clatter of trays. Served with a spoonful of baked beans or a pile of cabbage, it filled a belly for next to nothing. Vegetarian before the word was common, cheap enough to feed a whole shift, cheese and potato pie was the quiet workhorse of the works kitchen, unglamorous, uncomplaining, and always on the hot plate when the queue came through. Number 22. Faggots and peas. Faggots, parcels of minced pig's offal and breadcrumbs wrapped in caul fat, arrived at the canteen counter swimming in thick, dark gravy, flanked by a scoop of mushy peas. In the industrial Midlands and the Black Country especially, faggots were canteen royalty, a way of turning the cheapest parts of the pig into something rich and deeply savoury. Cooks braised them slowly through the morning so they were falling soft by the dinner whistle, the gravy reduced to a glossy, peppery sauce. A portion cost a few pence, and for a man who had spent the morning at a furnace or a press, it was a plate worth queuing for. The smell, liver, sage, and onions hung in the canteen air and drifted out to the yard. Faggots asked nothing of the diner but an appetite, and in the works canteens of the 1950s, appetites were rarely in short supply. Number 21. Tripe and onions. Tripe and onions carried the sharpest divide of any dish on the canteen menu, especially in the mill towns of the industrial north. Pale honeycombed sheets of cow's stomach, simmered slow in milk with onions until tender, ladled out with a shake of white pepper. To the older workers it was a delicacy, cheap, gentle on the stomach, and eaten with real relish. To the young lads coming onto the line it was an ordeal, the smell alone enough to turn them from the queue. In 1952, tripe still accounted for a striking share of the meat eaten in northern mill towns, and no canteen serving the region could ignore it. The dinner ladies knew exactly who would want it and who would not. Loved or loathed, tripe and onions marked a generational line drawn straight through the canteen, the old ways lingering on the hot plate, while newer tastes crept in behind. Number 20. Boiled bacon ribs and peas pudding. In the northeast, no canteen dinner felt complete without boiled bacon ribs and peas pudding. Split yellow peas were tied in a cloth and boiled for hours alongside salted bacon bones until they collapsed into a thick, buttery, golden paste. The bacon, soaked overnight to draw out the salt, fell soft from the bone, and the two were served together with a ladle of the cooking liquor. It was cheap, deeply savory, and it stuck to the ribs of men facing an afternoon of heavy labor. The smell, smoky, earthy, unmistakable, seeped into the canteen walls and clung to overalls long after the plates were cleared. Workers repeated the old rhyme without thinking. Peas pudding hot, peas pudding cold. For the shipyard and pithead canteens of Tyneside and Durham, this was regional pride served on a tin tray, a taste of home eaten shoulder to shoulder with 100 other men. Number 19. Braised stuffed heart. Few meals stretched a shilling further than braised heart, and the works canteen leaned on it heavily. Ox or lamb hearts, trimmed of their valves, stuffed with sage and onion breadcrumbs, and braised for hours in a rich brown gravy until the dense muscle finally yielded. Offal was a fraction of the price of prime cuts, and in a canteen feeding hundreds on a tight budget, that mattered more than anything. The cooks prepared trays of them through the morning, the smell of onions and gravy building until the dinner queue formed. Sliced open on the plate, the stuffing spilled out beside a mound of mashed potato. Lean, filling, and packed with iron for men who burned it up on the factory floor, heart was thrift-made edible. Younger diners eyed it warily, but the older hands, raised on nothing wasted, cleaned their plates and asked what was for pudding. Number 18. Rissoles. Rissoles were the canteen's answer to leftovers, and a clever one at that. Cold cooked meat, minced fine and bound with mashed potato, breadcrumbs, and a little onion, shaped into flat cakes, coated in crumbs, and fried until crisp and brown. Nothing from the previous day's joint went to waste, and every scrap found its way into the mix. Behind the servery, the cooks turned out rissoles by the tray, stacking them golden under the lamps beside gravy and greens. A man could fill up on 2 or 3 for a few pence, and to the untrained eye, they looked almost like a proper meat dinner. The crisp shell gave way to a soft, savory middle, seasoned with whatever the kitchen had to hand. Born of Depression-era thrift and carried straight into the 1950s canteen, the humble rissole proved that a good cook could feed a factory on very little indeed. Number 17. Semolina pudding. No canteen dinner was complete without a pudding, and few were more infamous than semolina, a pale, milky porridge of fine wheat, sweetened with a little sugar and crowned with a single spoonful of red jam that bled slowly across the surface. To generations of factory workers and the school children who ate its twin at dinner time, it was known, not always kindly, as frog spawn. The dinner ladies ladled it thick from vast enamel jugs into shallow bowls, and men who had just demolished a plate of faggots spooned it down without complaint. It was cheap, filling, and gave a shift worker the sugar to see out the afternoon. Some loathed the skin that formed on top, others prized it. Tapioca did the same job on other days, its little pearls earning the very same nickname. Sweet, stodgy, and unpretentious, Semolina was comfort served by the bucketful. Number 16. Liver and onions. Liver and onions sizzled onto canteen plates across Britain, one of the cheapest ways to serve real meat to a hungry workforce. Slices of lamb or pig's liver, fried fast in a hot pan and smothered in soft caramelized onions, served with mashed potato and a pool of thick gravy. Liver cost a fraction of the price of steak, and it was rich in the iron that men doing hard physical work needed. Timing was everything. A minute too long, and the liver turned tough and bitter, and the best canteen cooks earned quiet respect for getting it right. The strong metallic smell filled the dining hall and lingered in overalls. Some workers wrinkled their noses, others counted it a favorite. Nutritious, affordable, and quick to cook in quantity, liver and onions was a canteen fixture that fed the muscle Britain relied on to rebuild itself after the war. Number 15. Scotch broth. When the weather turned and the factory floor ran cold, the canteen reached for Scotch broth. A thick, hearty soup of barley, dried peas, diced root vegetables, and whatever cheap cut of mutton the kitchen could spare, simmered slow until the barley swelled and the broth turned cloudy and rich. It was less a starter than a meal in itself, and for the lowest paid workers, a bowl of broth with bread was often the whole dinner. The cooks kept a great pot going from early morning, the smell of mutton and vegetables curling through the canteen and out into the yard. Ladled steaming into bowls, it warmed a man from the inside before an afternoon in an unheated works. Cheap, nourishing, and endlessly forgiving of leftovers, Scotch broth carried the spirit of thrift that ran through every canteen in the land. Nothing wasted, everyone fed. Number 14. Corned beef hash. Corned beef hash was the canteen's reliable standby, built around the blue-labeled tins that arrived in their thousands from Argentina. The dense pink beef was diced with boiled potato and onion, fried in a wide pan until the bottom crisped into a savory brown crust, then served in generous scoops. Tinned corned beef needed no refrigeration and never spoiled, which made it perfect for a busy works kitchen feeding hundreds a day. The metallic tang of the beef mingled with frying onions and drifted through the dining hall. A plateful was cheap, filling, and quick to turn out in quantity when the queue stretched to the door. Topped sometimes with a fried egg or a spoonful of baked beans, it was the sort of honest, unfussy plate that suited factory life. Corned beef hash asked no questions and made no promises beyond a full stomach, and that was exactly enough. Number 13. Bubble and squeak. Bubble and squeak turned the previous day's leftover vegetables into a canteen favorite, its name taken from the hiss and pop of cabbage and potato hitting the hot fat. Cold mash and boiled greens were pressed together and fried in a wide pan until the edges crisped dark and brown. In a canteen kitchen where waste was unthinkable, it was the perfect way to clear the pots and feed a shift at the same time. Served alongside a slice of cold meat, a fried egg, or a spoonful of gravy, it made a full plate from what would otherwise have gone in the bin. The smell of frying cabbage divided the dining hall exactly as it divided households, but the crisp brown edges were prized by all. Cheap, quick, and satisfying, Bubble and Squeak carried the make-do spirit of the era straight onto the factory worker's tray. Number 12. Bangers and mash. Sausage and mash, bangers and mash, to every man on the line, was the comfort dinner the canteen could always be trusted to serve. Fat pork sausages, browned in the oven and served over a mound of buttery mashed potato, the whole thing flooded with thick onion gravy. sausages stretched further than a proper joint, padded out as they were with breadcrumbs and rusk, which suited a kitchen counting every penny. The dinner ladies ladled gravy with a practiced swing of the wrist, and men carried their steaming plates to the long tables with something close to contentment. It was warm, cheap, and endlessly popular, the sort of plate that needed no explaining and left no one disappointed. For a worker facing a long afternoon shift, few sights were more welcome than a plate of bangers, a hill of mash, and gravy running down the sides. Number 11. Cornish pasty. The Cornish pasty travelled far beyond Cornwall and into canteens across industrial Britain, prized as the perfect working man's meal. A half-moon of sturdy pastry crimped along one edge and packed with beef, potato, swede, and onion, seasoned simply and baked until golden. Its origins lay with the tin miners of the West, who once carried a pasty underground and held it by the thick crimped edge with dirty hands, eating the middle and throwing the crust away. In the works canteen it needed no plate and no cutlery, which made it a favourite of men eating fast between shifts. The pastry held the heat, and the filling stayed hot long after it left the oven. Cheap, portable, and filling all at once, the pasty was a complete dinner sealed in a crust, a self-contained meal that suited the rhythm of factory life better than almost anything else on the counter. Number 10. Lancashire Hot Pot. Lancashire Hot Pot brought the taste of the mill town home straight into the works canteen. Chunks of mutton layered with sliced onion and topped with overlapping slices of potato, baked slow until the top crisped golden and the meat below fell tender in its own rich juices. It was a dish built for feeding many on little, which made it ideal for a canteen kitchen. The great trays went into the ovens through the morning, the smell of mutton and onions filling the dining hall long before the whistle. The prized portions were the crisp browned potatoes from the top, fought over exactly as they were at home. Cheap cuts, slow cooking, and a golden crust. Hot pot was northern thrift raised to an art. For the workers of Lancashire's mills and factories, a canteen hot pot was a small daily reminder of the kitchens they had left that morning, warm and familiar on a tin tray. Number 9. Fried fish and chips. Friday meant fish, and the canteen honoured the tradition without fail. Fillets of cod or haddock dipped in batter and fried crisp, piled beside a generous heap of chips and a spoonful of marrow-fat peas. For the many Catholic workers who kept meatless Fridays, it was a necessity, and for everyone else it was simply the best plate of the week. The friars worked hard behind the servery, the smell of hot fat and vinegar rolling out across the dining hall as the dinner queue formed early. A splash of malt vinegar, a shake of salt, and a man had a plate to look forward to at the end of a long week. Cheaper than the chippy on the corner and served hot at the subsidized counter, canteen fish and chips was the small Friday reward that made the grind worthwhile. Golden, crisp, and gone in minutes. Number 8. Toad in the hole. Toad in the hole made a handful of sausages feed a whole shift, and the canteen loved it for exactly that reason. Fat sausages were nestled into a wide tin, a simple batter of flour, eggs, and milk poured around them, and the lot baked until the batter rose golden and crisp, while the sausages browned in the middle. It was Yorkshire pudding pressed into the service of a full meal, cheap flour and eggs stretching a little meat a very long way. Cut into thick squares and served with onion gravy, it filled a plate and a belly for next to nothing. The prized pieces were the crisp corners, where the batter climbed the sides of the tin. The smell of baking batter and browning sausage drifted through the dining hall and set stomachs rumbling. Playful, filling, and endlessly economical, Toad in the hole made scarcity taste almost like a treat. Number 7. Cottage pie. Cottage pie anchored the canteen menu as one of its most dependable dinners. Minced beef simmered with onions and gravy, spread into deep trays and blanketed with a thick layer of mashed potato, then baked until the top ridged golden and crisp. It stretched a small amount of meat across a great many plates, which made it a natural fit for a kitchen feeding hundreds on a budget. The dinner ladies cut it into neat squares and served it with a scoop of cabbage or peas and a little extra gravy. Warm, soft, and comforting, it was the kind of plate that pleased almost everyone who came through the queue. The smell of baked mince and potato hung in the dining hall through the dinner hour. Humble and unfailing, cottage pie was the quiet backbone of the works canteen. Never the most exciting dinner on the counter, but always among the most welcome. Number 6. Stew and dumplings. When the cold set in, nothing pleased a canteen queue like stew and dumplings. Cheap cuts of beef, shin, skirt, or scrag, simmered slow with carrots, onions, and swede until the meat surrendered and the gravy turned dark and thick. Then came the dumplings. Balls of suet and flour dropped into the pot to swell soft and light, soaking up the rich broth as they cooked. It was a meal built to fuel heavy labor, dense enough to carry a man through an afternoon at a furnace or a lathe. The great pots bubbled from early morning, the smell of beef and onions curling through the works. Ladled steaming over a dumpling or two, it was warmth and comfort in a single bowl. Cheap, filling, and deeply satisfying, stew and dumplings was the canteen dinner that best answered the twin demands of factory life, a tight budget and a hard day's work. Number 5. Steak and kidney pudding. Steak and kidney pudding stood near the top of the canteen's affections, a proper feast on a working man's budget. Suet pastry lined a basin filled with chunks of beef and kidney in a dark, peppery gravy, then sealed and steamed for hours until the crust turned glossy and the filling ran rich. The steaming was slow work, but a canteen kitchen had the ovens and the time, and the reward was a dinner that felt like a treat. Turned out onto the plate, the crust split to release a cloud of savory steam that drew envious glances across the dining hall. The kidneys gave it a deep, mineral richness that the cheaper mince dishes could never match. Filling, warming, and unmistakably generous, steak and kidney pudding was the plate that made a man feel properly looked after. The canteen at its finest, turning humble offcuts into something close to luxury. Number 4. Meat and potato pie. In the north especially, meat and potato pie ruled the canteen counter with quiet authority. Chunks of beef and diced potato in a thick onion gravy, sealed under a lid of short-crust pastry, and baked until the top turned deep golden, and the filling bubbled through the vents. It was more than a dinner in Lancashire and Yorkshire. It was a badge of identity, the same pie that fed football crowds and miners' galas served hot at the works counter. The dinner ladies cut it into generous squares, the gravy pooling on the plate beside a scoop of mushy peas. The pastry held the filling's heat long enough for a man to carry it to the far end of a crowded dining hall. Cheap, hearty, and fiercely regional, meat and potato pie was the taste of the industrial north on a tin tray, a dinner worth clocking off early to queue for. Number 3. Jam, roly-poly, and custard. For dessert, few things raised a cheer in the canteen like jam, roly-poly, and custard. A thick sheet of suet dough spread with bright red jam, rolled tight and steamed until it swelled sticky and sweet, then cut into fat pinwheel slices and drowned in a jug of hot custard. It was suet-heavy and unashamedly stodgy, exactly the sort of sweet, filling pudding that gave a shift worker the energy to see out a long afternoon. The dinner ladies ladled custard with a generous hand, and men who spent their days lifting and hauling tucked in without a second thought about their waistlines. The smell of steamed jam and vanilla custard drifted out from the servery and lifted the whole dining hall. Cheap to make and beloved by all, jam roly-poly was the canteen pudding that turned the simplest ingredients into a small daily celebration at the end of the meal. Number 2. Spotted dick and pink custard. Higher still in the canteen's affections sat spotted dick, or its close cousin treacle sponge, crowned with the unmistakable jug of bright pink custard. The steamed suet sponge, studded with currants or flooded with golden syrup, was the sweet reward that generations of workers remembered long after the machines fell silent. And the custard, dyed a startling pink for reasons no one could quite explain, became legend in its own right, a colour found in canteens and school halls the length of Britain. The dinner ladies turned out the puddings by the tray, steam rising as the basins were upturned. Thick, sweet, and gloriously stodgy, a slice of spotted dick under a flood of pink custard was the highlight of many a working day. It cost the canteen next to nothing to make, yet it delivered a warmth and comfort out of all proportion to its price. Pure nostalgia on a spoon. Number 1. Roast beef and Yorkshire pudding. And in first place, the crown of the canteen week. Roast beef and Yorkshire pudding. The works dinner that made a factory worker feel like a king for a shilling. A slice or two of roast beef, a crisp golden Yorkshire pudding, roast and mashed potatoes, a scoop of greens, and a generous flood of thick brown gravy over the lot. Served often on a Friday or to mark the end of the week, it was the meal the whole shift looked forward to, the reward for 5 hard days on the line. The great joints roasted through the morning, the smell of beef and gravy filling the works until men could think of little else. At the subsidized counter, it cost a fraction of what the same plate would fetch anywhere else, and that was the quiet magic of the canteen. A proper Sunday-style roast, midweek, within reach of every worker in the place. Steam rising, gravy running, 100 men eating shoulder to shoulder. For the factory worker of the 1950s, this was as good as dinner got. From brown Windsor soup to the crowning roast, these 25 canteen meals fed the men and women who rebuilt Britain after the war, cheap, hearty, and served hot across long formica tables between shifts. They were more than dinners. They were the fuel of a nation's factories and the taste of a working life that has all but vanished. Which of these did you or your family eat in a works canteen? Let us know in the comments, and if this brought back a memory or two, do not forget to subscribe.